What's up, guys? Today's video we're going to be talking about loneliness. And Jesus talks a lot about loneliness. He says some people are just meant for it and some people aren't, and some people it's a real challenge, being lonely and how you interact and seek attention or whatever else from other people. It plays a big part into your life. And so today we're going to talk about loneliness and what Jesus says and just how to handle it. Unfortunately, just loneliness sucks. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you don't have friends. Sometimes you don't have family. Sometimes you don't have anyone to do your hobbies with, whatever. And it just kind of makes life utterly suck. I'm not going to come here and say, go travel the world all on your own. It's the coolest experience ever. As an airline pilot who travels per se alone all the time, it sucks. I hate it. I hate going places by myself. I think it's so much more fun when you have your girlfriend there, your friends there, your family there, whatever it is. I hardly even truly enjoy something, like a vacation when I could go see stuff. Obviously it's neat and I'm very blessed to go see it, but when I'm by myself, it's like, it's not really to the same effect, I'd say, than when I go do fun things with people that I care about. And like I just said, I was an airline pilot, and so after I left the regional airlines and I got hired on a major airline, I fly the 737 now, I had to move from Kansas, where I grew up and all my friends are, I went to college, everything, that's like my home and the whole state. I have people all over it that I know. Every city in Kansas, I know someone from it almost, it seems like. And my family and my cousins and everyone's in the city, Kansas City, and everyone that I know, that's just like where my home is. And I didn't know anyone in Minneapolis. I knew one guy from work, and so I left the regionals and I decided commuting is terrible. It ruined my life. It's making me miserable, unhappy. I hate my airline pilot job. Commuting is where I would fly to New York or Detroit to start work every day. So every time I had to go to work, I do like 4-day trips at a time, and when I'd start work, I'd go fly to work, and then I'd get there early, sit around, then I'd fly home, and then I'd get done with work, and I'd sit around maybe a day extra or whatever, waiting to get a free flight home. And then eventually it just sucked. I got sick of doing it, so I moved. And I was having too much of a negative impact on my life, and my quality of life, just how happy I was all the time. It just made me miserable. As a miserable person, and so I decided to change my life. And so in doing that, I decided I'm going to move to Minneapolis, be home based at my new job. I'm gonna just drive to work, and I'm gonna see if it's easier for me to just live like that and have my own spot and everything, and than it would be to keep commuting to work, because I didn't like it. What a noob guy. The guy did. I kind of waved at me anyway. Whatever, the guy. But bicyclist, right? But so I moved up to Minneapolis. I didn't know a single person, and for about 2 years I lived here by myself. Didn't know anybody else, and it sucked. I mean, I loved riding motorcycles and dirt bikes, and I was in the car stuff, and I flew airplanes. I loved shooting guns. I liked fishing, and luckily a lot of my hobbies, it's not super weird to just go fishing by yourself or go shoot guns by yourself, out in the wilderness of Minnesota at these places where I just make safe and can shoot and all this, whatever. I started mountain biking, I ride motorcycles. A lot of my hobbies, are solo things. But after a point, I was like, I tried to go home and see my family all the time and my friends, and eventually I was just like, man, life is really lonely. And it sucked. And being lonely, it can kind of make you weird. It makes you do think about things. You can't just bounce an idea off someone and them tell you're an idiot. You don't have anyone. You're like, oh, I'll try this, and you go do it, and you're like, that was a bad idea. You start doing stupid things, or your personality after you're alone for a long time definitely gets weird. I'm just gonna say it for myself. Maybe I'm not talking about you, maybe I'm talking about myself, but after a while of living on your own too long or being isolated kind of like that, you start becoming, maybe selfish or harder to be around people because you're just not used to it. Being around people, socialism and all that, like being social, that's kind of, in my opinion, a perishable skill that, you know, you have to stay current and whatever, and being social with other people, because you get weird after a while. And I wouldn't say I got weird. I always, you know, at work I'm pretty social and everything else, but in real life I just was like, I felt so lonely for so long, and it was so miserable. And I prayed about it, I talked to God, and I didn't hear anything for so long, you know. It took a while, and then finally my best friend moved up here, and then I made a few friends, and then I started having things to do, and things got better over time, but it wasn't overnight, you know. I spent like and then my girlfriend, I ended up meeting her, and she lives up here, and it's like, I spent a lot of time by myself, alone, living a pretty miserable life, and sad life almost, in some sense. No dog, no pets, nothing, just me. And the closest person I knew was like 8 hours away. I was trying to follow God, right? And all my friends that live up here, they just smoke, drink, and party, and I didn't want to be a part of that. I didn't want to be at the bar or the club every night, and I didn't like it, so I didn't see them, because that's all they did. And you know, it was hard. I chose God. You know, I could have had things to do. I could have been out at the bar every night with my airline pilot work friends, and I could have been, you know, people do bad things and all kinds of other stuff, and I didn't want to be a part of it. I wanted nothing to do with it. So I chose, you know, I'm gonna put God first, and I trust God will work it out somehow. I might have to just embrace the suck, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's just that way forever, and my reward's in heaven for making the right choice. I don't know, but I embraced the suck, and I just was by myself, and that's how it was. And it was miserable. And over time, you know, I started meeting people. I decided I'd start to go to church. So I went to church, and I started meeting, made friends with some old ladies, you know, better than none. And I became friends with some other people, this or that. And you know, eventually I got to know a few people. But if you never leave your house, you're never going to meet anyone. If you never try, you're never going to meet anyone. It's super awkward, you know. Go to church, sign up for the group for your age, and then go, you know, meet some people. But it wasn't easy, you know. That first time showing up, having to send someone a text like, oh yeah, hey, I'd be interested in trying this. And then if it doesn't work, just not going back, you know. Don't think you have to go back. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Cut it off. The longer you do it, the weirder it is, right? And then when you leave, or the harder it is to go, it's not for you, just go and move on to the next, you know. Don't constantly jump from thing to thing, never ever planting your feet. Eventually, you know, something's for you, and you can try it out and stick with something, you know. Stick to it, even when it's a little weird or hard. But you know, don't be afraid to also cut it off at the same time, you know. That's your own discretion for understanding that. But all I'm saying is I experienced it. I really didn't like it. It was just miserable. I'm like 24. I'm living by myself, no family, no friends, nothing. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, yeah, I had a really nice place I lived, and it was like everything most people my age would want. Like everything they would want. And I kind of got it. I had a high-paying job, cool. I had like the nicest apartment you've ever seen, you know, in downtown, like right on the edge of it, on a river. It was beautiful, with a garage and everything, and it was like, it was awesome. And then I realized I'm not happy with any of this. Let me go back to being the hood rat that I am. And I moved, and I went back to enjoying things that I enjoy, you know, motorcycles, mountain biking, that stuff. I went back to it. I started getting into the hobbies I want, and I stuck with them. Started going to church, taking it seriously, putting God first. And you know, my life changed. Now it's like, now I am so busy, I don't know where to find the time, you know, with family, friends, all this stuff. It's always something, you know. It's like, now it's like I'm almost on the opposite spectrum of being lonely and bored, or lonely with no one. It's now I have too much going on sometimes, and I have to cautiously limit that I don't overstretch myself and take days to rest. But you know, look at me. I went from one way to another. It took a couple years, you know. You think you pray to God for some friends, that tomorrow some people are gonna knock on your door and they're just say, hey, let's be friends, you know. Maybe not, I don't know. But it took a long time, and I had to be patient. But the point is enjoy life in that time. In that time, I went camping by myself in the woods, which was terrifying. I did that stuff. I went shooting. I mountain biked a ton. I went all over. Minnesota's got tons of mountain biking, believe it or not. And so I did it all. I did all this fun stuff. I did a little traveling, went up through Duluth, you know, by myself. I just did things, and I made it work. My dad would come up, and we'd go do stuff all the time, you know. We had fun. And it was like, you know, I just enjoyed life. I made the best of a bad situation, per se. And that's all you can do. You know, you really might be in a bad situation, but make the best of it. You know, loneliness sucks, and it's so hard. It's probably the hardest thing, you know, I would say, just about anything, because it leads you into such strange places that you normally maybe wouldn't go, wouldn't do, whatever. Or it just isolates you from society. You know, community is important. You need the people around you to tell you you're being stupid sometimes. You need someone near you to say, hey, that's really weird, don't do that, don't wear that, don't act like that, you're acting like an idiot, stop, you know. You need those people around you, otherwise you become what your weird, sinful, bad mind takes you. You know, in the Bible, Jesus says you have communities. You know, you might meet a friend and he sticks closer than a brother or something, and God will put and place people in your life for a reason. Maybe your best friend's some 50-year-old divorced co-worker guy, and you guys start going to church together and you're like 21. You know, who knows? It can be anyone. Maybe it's your old lady neighbor. You just go mow her lawn and you chill and hang out with her every once in a while, just keep her company because she's lonely, and now you have a friend and it's an old lady you're next to you. Who knows? You know, you never know. So much weird stuff happens in this world, and you just take it for what it is. Take it day by day. You know, don't worry about what other people think of you too much, but don't act like a weirdo. I mean, just live a happy life. Do what you want to do. You know, if you have interests, if you have hobbies, don't wait. People always say, you know, this one guy I was talking to at work, he kept saying, you know, I'm gonna wait to get a mountain bike till I move, and then I make some friends there, and then I'll see if they want to get one to go with me. I was like, what a stupid thing to do. You know, what a wait. It's a bicycle. Get a bicycle, my dude. You gotta have, you know, 2 years life experience and move and all this just to buy a bicycle? Like, just buy one and go have fun. You know, forget about everyone else. Start tomorrow, start today, you know, start saving money today so you can do that, you know, whatever it takes. I don't know. But I just remember thinking that was one of the stranger things I'd ever heard, was this guy telling me that he needed to move and make friends before he could buy a bicycle, of all things. I was like, of all the things you would never need to wait for, that's absolutely the thing I would not wait on. You know, I don't know. Take it for what it is. Apply that example however you want in your own life. But, you know, Jesus says we should have the community of people around us. That community might be the church. Sometimes you might have to get involved. That's why they call it getting involved. It's not just calling it or being involved. It's because you have to try. You know, no one's going to come up. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. You go to church and you just awkwardly walk in, last second, leave first thing. People may not come and say, hey, come to my house this evening, we're gonna have fun. You know, you might have to say, I'm new here, you know, I just moved here, this is my name, whatever. Say hi to them, see them a couple times, you know, build whatever. Go to the church, decide if it's good for you, try different things out that it offers. I don't know, go try Bible studies. Who knows? You know, that's a great way, that's a good way. But Jesus, he doesn't want you to be lonely. You know, he talks about how lonely this life is, how miserable it is, how abandoned people can feel in this life. Jesus says he will never leave you nor forsake you or abandon you. That's the living God is telling you that you're never alone. So you might feel alone. You might be sitting at home bored watching The Chosen on your couch. Jesus might be sitting there right there next to you with you, keeping you company as you're learning about him and trying to get to know his personality through just watching a fun TV show, you know? Who knows? Maybe he sent an angel, your guardian angel, sitting next to you, watching with you, and I don't know, you know, silly example, but all I'm saying is God's with you always. You're not ever alone. You're never alone, no matter how weird it is. You know, when you're in the bathroom taking a crap, when you're getting fired for your job, Jesus is in the room too, you know? When you gather with a few people to pray, the real essence of Christ is there, and that's what the Bible says. And when, you know, more than two or more or something gather in the name of Jesus, Jesus is there. And you can pray, you can find these avenues, look stuff up. You know, how many Google searches have you done of things to try? You know, if so many of my friends say they're lonely and they don't meet girls, they don't have any friends, and it's like, yeah, because you sit at home playing video games all day long, you go to work, act like a hermit at work, And then when people do stuff, try to invite you to stuff, you act weird about it. You never say yes. It's like you're doing it to yourself. You know, you're sitting there and you're holding the door shut, even when other people are knocking, trying to get you to open it. You know, don't do that to yourself. You might be a fat, weird dude that sits on his couch and plays video games and watches TV all day long. You know, go out, join a gym. Go out, start riding a e-bike around on flat pavement and get a little exercise. Go make some friends. Go to a video game convention. You know, go to church. Ask at church at your group, say, you know, does anyone else play video games here? And the guy says yes. Say, oh, you play Fortnite? Yeah, let's play Fortnite sometime. You want to squat up? And the guy's like, sure. And suddenly now you have a friend to play video games with. Now you're commuting with someone. Maybe you can say, hey, you know, you want to go grab dinner or something after you're playing? I don't know. Don't be weird. Don't try to take the dude on a date. But, you know, whatever. But all I'm saying is there's options. There's so many ways that you can better your situation. So many people they don't truly try. They might want something to be different, but they don't do anything really different to make their situation better. You know, I see this in myself and my friends and stuff. It's like, you say you want friends, you say you want to do this, you're not trying, you know, you're not doing anything that would warrant that. It's like, yeah, you need to get out there. Maybe, you know, at work, when you are really like hit it off with someone, say like, I asked you this in the weirdest way, but like, hey, we share this enjoyment. Would you maybe find something that's not weird? You know, be like, hey, would you want to play video games together? You want to add me on Xbox? We can maybe play sometime. Or what if they say no? Then brush it off. Who cares? Forget it ever happened. Just be their friend like before. It's no big deal. Some people like separating work and outside of life. You know, maybe they don't know, whatever. Maybe you are just weird and they don't want to be your friend that much or something. I don't know. Don't force people to be your friend. One friend. And this is another thing I think lonely people do. They latch on to someone. Like, you are your own person, you know. If you're lonely and all this, so many people get out there and then they make one friend or something and they latch onto them, and it's almost like a leech. Like, you can't get away from them. Like you need to be your own person still. You know, have your own life. You're not suddenly like married to this person. They're just a friend, you know. Keep them like a friend. If they're interested in being way closer friends or something, that's fine, but don't overimpose per se yourself on someone. That can happen too. You know, I don't know if I've ever done that. Maybe not, but I've had people do that to me, and it's violently like uncomfortable for me. That it's just like it's like you're so all over me that I feel like I can't breathe, and sometimes it gets annoying. Like, let's just be friends, you know. Let's just be normal friends. Like, why this is getting too much, and then they might separate themselves from you, you know. Friend advice. But the thing is in your situation, Jesus is always with you. I don't care how lonely you feel or whatever you think, you know, Jesus is there with you. He's not leaving you. He's not abandoning you. You're not all on your own, you know. Yeah, life sucks, it gets lonely, it happens. Because it is what it is. Take it for what it is. You know, don't freak out. Don't panic. Don't think that whatever, but some people, you know, maybe you're watching this video and you have a few friends and all, but you don't have a girlfriend. You don't have someone to be like that intimate way with. If you're not happy in a sense of the way you're living now, you're probably not going to be happy when you get a girlfriend. You know, if you can't enjoy life right now, you probably can't enjoy it with a girlfriend. Yeah, for a short time you might get some short-term satisfaction and this and that, but in the long run, it's like now you're just going to be two weirdo bored people together, and you might say, well, that's really great and on. Yeah, maybe not, maybe it is, I don't know. But you just go out there, you know, have a life. If you don't have a life, if your life is video games and Netflix, you know, there's a world out there. Go experience it. That's not the right way, you know. Go on a walk. Try just going on walks, you know. Just go find somewhere with no one else around. Like, I go walk these hunting trails. I don't like seeing other people on walks. I feel weird walking on my own. I feel like people think I'm some kind of pervert or creep or something. I don't know. It weirds me out, so I just walk around on my own. I go places that no one else is around. I walk. And yeah, I'm not making friends that way, but I'm not cooped up in the house all day long. You know, you need some fresh air, you need something. it's just go try new things. That's all I'm saying, is I'm just pointing you to the act of actually trying something, and not just sitting around forever and always, you know, just doing the same old stuff. You gotta try new things. You know, life is hard and it's weird and bad things happen, and the Bible says, you know, some people are meant to be like eunuchs, or I think is what it's called, and where you're just not married, you're just on your own, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. You know, if you're one of those people that never gets married, yeah, you might do whatever, but, you know, try to have some friends, try to have some hobbies, have, you know, a couple friends that you maybe have a schedule, like every once a month you go out to dinner with or something, you know, you guys all hang out, you get involved in activities, you know, join a mountain biking club, join a motorcycle club. Don't join the Hells Angels and start doing meth-fueled gay stuff and, you know, whatever, just transporting drugs and blowing each other, like, other gang buildings up. But, you know, go make a few friends, cruise around together, who knows, see where the wind takes you, type of thing. But sometimes life is just lonely, and there might be days in the future that suddenly, you know, you trust God, you pray to him, you talk to him about it, and he answers your prayer, and now your life is so busy that you don't even have the time to do all these things that you want to do, because now you got friends, a girlfriend, a wife, kids, all this, and now you're like, man, I miss the days when I was so bored that I didn't know what to do. You know, you talk about how great it was, all this, but in that time you actually hated it, you know. I don't know. Go enjoy it now, you know, go do it now. Don't wait, start planning now. Maybe your thing is just you want to go on a road trip, I don't know, start planning it now. Why not? You know, set a date, say here's what I'm going. Maybe you have a flexible day, I'm going in this month or something, you know, who cares? And then move towards it and do it, you know, act on it. So many people, they give lip service to everything, right? They talk and they say this and that, but they never follow through. Don't be like those people. Actually follow through with it. Really get down to the beans, right? And, you know, follow through. Remember that too, that when you come into a social situation as well, if you're lonely, you know, if you've experienced loneliness and you're just so miserable and lonely, you know, take an easy step back into the situation. Sometimes you have to think about other people may not be lonely like you in your life, and then you expect this or that or whatever, and it's not always your way or the highway. Sometimes you got to cooperate. You know, sometimes it's more on you than them, and sometimes it's more on them than you, and whatever else. I don't know, but what I'm saying is, it's just there's ways to work through loneliness. There's ways to be patient about sitting through it. There's ways about not just hating life. You know, enjoy life even when it's not the most fun thing in the world like that. Still enjoy it. You know, you still got a beautiful day to be alive. You still have all these opportunities. Go learn something new. Take a cooking class. Get better at whatever your hobby is. I don't know. Pick up a new one. All these things, they're options, and they exist, and they're real. And you have opportunities to do them and whatever else. You know, go live it. You're living today. You know, you don't die saying having done nothing, just giving up on life, and lazy. Laziness is a sin, right? And loneliness and laziness, I think, really coincide. It's like, yeah, great, you go to the gym. That's not enough. Going just to the gym for a couple hours a day and then thinking you're a gym bro and whatever, making that your hobby, maybe that is your thing, but have some life outside of it. Don't, you know, on the second hand, don't idolize something. Don't get so sucked into one hobby that it becomes an idol in your life and you start forgetting about God because you're so fixated on one thing, you know. God's first, and then that, you know. Glorify God with your hobbies. I love motorcycle riding. I ride a ton. You know, I talk about Jesus while riding to mix him into my hobbies so I can glorify God with my actions, you know, with my time, whatever else. I don't just try to, you know, separate it all. You know, all of me is with God, and so through all my actions, all my hobbies, through my work and flying airplanes and motorcycles and cars and shooting, I try to always involve God in it somehow. I don't know what that way may be. It could just simply be taking some other people with me and letting them enjoy the hobby with me, you know, just try to do the best I can to care about others, treat others the way you want to be treated, all that stuff. You know, Jesus says it's important to take time to be alone. When Jesus was teaching people, he went off into the wilderness and he spent time on his own too. don't think you always have to be busy. You know, maybe you've been lonely for so long and God answers these prayers. You know, don't forget about God suddenly. Maybe the devil gives you a friend, and he gives you all these friends, but they're all bad friends that do drugs and drink and party. And now you are lonely for so long, but you have no friends. Or all your friends are bad people, you know, and they're doing stuff you shouldn't even be involved in as a Christian. And now you say, oh, was it better to follow Jesus and be lonely, or was it better to have all these friends and live every way Jesus told me not to? I mean, better be lonely and have Jesus than have the world, you know? What is the profit of man to gain the world but lose Jesus? And that's a hard one too, is continuing to be lonely, knowing that you're doing what's right, even when it's really hard. Remember, God is good, you know, He hears your prayers. Loneliness sucks. I genuinely think it's like the hardest thing. You know, lust is terrible. I think that's a hard one, and anger is a hard one, and patience is hard, and all of this. But I think being lonely just straight drives into all of those so hard. You know, it's like a circle or something. It's all intertwined or connected, or I don't know. I don't know. A big thing for me is loneliness. I can relate to that so much. Even when I'm not, you know, even when life's as good as this, sometimes I'm at work and I'm in like Hawaii, or I'm in Cancun, or I'm in Costa Rica, and I'm seeing the most beautiful stuff of my life, and I'm just there by myself, and it's like, it's almost like I get to experience God in that moment and see His beauty and all this, but I want to share it with people that I care about. And even still, you know, with having the great life that I have right now, I get lonely, and loneliness can also be another thing. Throw this in there. I wasn't even thinking about this until I, you know, came up here, but I was like, loneliness, you can be really lonely with a lot of people around you. A lot of people, I think, that commit suicide or have serious problems in their lives, you know, they are people that just, they have all these people in their lives, and maybe they're the popular kid at school or whatever, and they have everything, you know, they have everyone, they have all this stuff. But the problem is it's like you have everyone, but you have no one. You know, it's better to have 2 close friends or 1 close friend than 10 friends that are just, you know, surface level, not true friends. You know, a true friend is worth 1,000,000 non-real friends, per se. I don't know. And sometimes you can be around people, maybe even have everything, but you just feel so alone because whatever, the world drives you down, bad stuff's happening, who knows, you name it, whatever. And that happens. But remember, God's with you. God knows, you know, God, well, I don't care what it is. I don't care what's happened to you. You can tell me the most terrifying, sad stuff, and I'll be sad and think it's wrong right there with you. But you're never alone. You were never alone through it. You never were abandoned through it. You had God day in and day out through that. And you should remember that. And you should be grateful for that. And you should appreciate having God there through it with you. I had to remind myself so much that, you know, God answers your prayers and He hears them. And all those days, you know, that I was so lonely or miserable or whatever else, and life sucked, and I prayed to God, you know, I'm 3 years down the line, and I may not think of it now, but God's now answered all these prayers that I prayed. You know, I prayed so much, and it might have been 3 years later, but they were answered. So does that not count because God didn't do it overnight? No, that's still an answered prayer that I prayed and trusted to God, and He answered it, you know, because He did, you know, it came. God can answer prayers, and it doesn't have to be on your timeline. It doesn't have to be in your way, you know. Sometimes you can ask God something, and He gives you a little bit different version of what you wanted, but it's the best version for you that He gave you. You know, who knows? Who knows why God does what He does? You know, some things you can find out. You know, some things you may never know. I don't know. We're humans. Just be patient. Trust that God's been alive for a really long time. You know, God has been around for all of existence. Me and you only live like 80, 90 years maybe. And so for God, our 90 years might be like a millisecond to Him, a flashing moment. And remembering that, like, oh yeah, God, you know, this happened a year later, that might have been like really, really fast for God. And it's just our stupidity, not understanding things. Remember, we are inherently kind of sinful. We don't always want what's best for us. And it's rough. And trusting that God knows what's best, that He's doing what's right, you can. God says you can trust Him, and He shows it. You know, He doesn't just say this. He backs it up with real life. He cares. He shows He cares. He died for you and me. You know, He did everything for us. If you're a little lonely for a little bit, you know, there's so many awesome things in life you can do. You know, if you have no money and you want to get a little motorcycle like this, go get a second job. You're lonely, you got a lot of free time, maybe you'll make some friends at the second job. You can save all your money up, you can invest it, do whatever, and then go save up, and a year later you have this motorcycle. Now you have friends, you have all this stuff that you prayed to God for. You know, you can't just ask God to do something and then expect not to have to do anything at all. You know, God, that's always my thing. Like, I probably talked about this 20 times now, but I'm a captain, right? I'm going through captain training at my airline. I'm not really a captain. I'm a per se captain. I'm in training, right? So once I'm done with training and I'm done with all these check rides and whatever, I'll be a captain. But I pray to God, you know, God, help me get to one of these legacy airlines, a better job where I can be there forever, and I know, so I can buy my house and I can start planning my future, because I love this place and I like it, but I don't know if this is the long-term life plan I want to be. You know, my airline got bought by another airline, and that other airline's like complete garbage, and I don't want to work there. You know, I look at their history, I look at their track, and I say, you know, I don't care what they're like now. For the last 40 years, you guys have been terrible, and because of that, I'm gonna make my decisions based off your reputation. You know, your reputation preceded you, and you didn't have a good one. So now I don't want to work for you. And so, but my last place was fantastic. And so now that that's changed for me, I think, okay, now I want to look in, and I pray to God, and I trust Him that He's going to help me get a new job, but I can't just do nothing. You know, you can go volunteer, you can do extra qualifications. You know, I'm upgrading to a captain to get PIC time, and then I should have no problem in like a month getting hired where I want to go. You know, and I know that, but it took a little work for me. So when I get there, did God suddenly not answer my prayer? No. He answered my prayer. He just said, yeah, do this and this, and you can have whatever you want, maybe. Maybe He said, you just got to work for it a little bit. It's in your hands, you know, you're welcome to do this. Maybe, I don't know, maybe He says no, maybe He says yes. Who knows? Maybe you're lucky and He just makes it happen for you. But the thing is put in some effort too. You know, work to make those dreams come true. Don't just think you're crazy and that God's just gonna be your servant. You know, let God do some of the work. You know, help Him out so it's not a miracle. You say, God, I want to be big and strong. Well, then go to the gym. God's not gonna make your muscles just magically appear on you, and if He does, that's like an awesome miracle. Then good for God, you know, glorify God for doing that. And then if you put in the work and it pays off, then in the same way, that prayer was answered because it happened. I don't know, that's how I think about it. It's kind of a long video, but when I was lonely, I had a lot of free time, so you can watch this too. I'm just joking, but I don't know. I'm doing burnouts here. Loneliness sucks, and it's hard, and it's miserable, and it's a rough part of life. You know, one of the roughest, if not the roughest part of my life was probably being lonely. And I wasn't just lonely, you know, after that I was lonely in middle school because I didn't have a lot of friends. I was lonely in high school because I felt like I didn't have a lot of friends for some of it, and then I was so lonely I got in the wrong crowd and I started doing things like drinking and vaping and nicotine and all this other stuff, bad things. I was just living a horrible life. I thought, what could be worse? You know, this is better than being alone. You know, I never want to go back to that. This is not that bad in comparison. And in truth, it was bad. It was way worse. You know, I wish I could go beat myself up because it was so much better being lonely than being the stupid idiot that I was there for so long. You know, I have to ask God for forgiveness for my sins that I committed because I was making such poor choices for so long and whatever, and my stupidity of my youth, and I wish I didn't ever make them, but I did. And so now that's just my existence, and I have to live through it, and it is what it is, right? You just take it for how it comes, and Trust that God paid the price for your sins, but it's better to be lonely than in the wrong crowd. Don't forget that. But you know, sometimes God just calls you to be in the place you are. Everything is a time, a place, and a place to learn. You know, enjoy where you are. You make the best of the worst situations out there. You know, sometimes as a pilot I get stuck. It's go home day, and now I get stuck in Mexico or something, and I'm missing a birthday party or a Christmas or a big event, and it's like, man, this really sucks, but hey, I'm in Mexico on the beach, let's enjoy it. You know, it sucks that I'm missing Christmas with my family, but you know, I'm just gonna enjoy being on the beach and glorify God in it. My family will be there when I get home, hopefully. You know, take it day by day, place by place, make the best of all the situations. You have one life. You have the choice to make it as good or bad as you want. And loneliness really makes it hard, but it's not impossible. You know, look at me, I'm having a blast today. And my girlfriend's gone, my family's not around, I'm just enjoying cruising around all by myself today. And I'm having a blast. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, sometimes you can just find ways, do things, have fun all on your own. And that's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with it. You don't need people around you all the time. Don't let your loneliness get you into doing bad things too for attention, or lead you into thinking weird stuff. You know, some people, like girls, they want attention, they don't want to be lonely, they want to have friends, and suddenly they start dressing inappropriately, and now they get all this male attention, they have all these friends, but it's like, are they real friends? Oh, there's a big snake! Oh geez, that scared the peanuts out of me. Woo! 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 I hate snakes. We're going back to look. I'm horrified. My legs are not going on that side of the bike when I ride back by. I'm up here. Oh, he's gone. He was in that hole. Oh my gosh. That was terrifying. Woo! You know, for the girls watching this, back to the video, you know, it's better to be lonely and weird than to get male attention that was ill-earned, per se. You know, it's so much better just to love God, be back up off the ground, because I'm scared. I'll admit it, I don't even care. That was a big snake. That was huge. He was like halfway in a hole still. Terrifying. Oh, now I'm so scared to ride off-road. I'm gonna get eaten by a python. They don't even have them in Minnesota, but I'm still scared. Alright. Well, now I'll probably run into a bear. Who knows? What a day. But loneliness sucks. You know, take it one day at a time, take it for what it is, and try to enjoy life the best you can. I know you may not be perfect, you may not be able to turn your life around overnight either. Just do the best you can. That's all God says. He wants your heart, He wants your mind, your soul. Give it to Him, trust Him, and see what happens. You know, I don't know what your future is, I don't know what'll happen, but I trust God is good, and that He's not going to lead you into a bad place, right? God loves you, He cares about you. He doesn't want you to have a horrible life. So just trust God, be with Him, and be patient. You know, be patient while you can. Take it easy and wait. You know, do the best you can to shape your own future too. Alright guys, remember, God is good. He loves you, He's with you. You're never left or forsaken. Just take it one day at a time and things will be alright. If you have any comments, questions, leave them down in there and I will try to respond to them or make a video about whatever, just for you. That'll be it for today, guys. I'll see ya.